All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Justin Mirigliani with Beyond Just the Weather with Justin Mirigliani. I want to talk to you real quick about how forecasts can be so different. People ask me all the time, they say, well, 2 days ago you were saying it was going to snow and it was going to be 30 degrees, and instead we're getting all rain and it's going to be 50 degrees. How could it be that different? How could you be so far off? And to be honest with you, when I started getting into weather, that it was back in 1983. I was 8 years old. We had the blizzard of 83 in Philadelphia. I lived in South Philadelphia at the time. They called it the Jim O'Brien storm. If you remember the late, great Jim O'Brien, he was predicting that storm. He was out in the weather, I remember, in the heavy snow with his cowboy hat and his cowboy boots, and he was talking about the record 21 plus inches that Philadelphia saw that day. So it was a pretty amazing storm, and that's what got me hooked on weather and snowstorms in general. So I want to talk to you about how close these types of storms can be. Very minor changes make humongous differences at the surface. So let me show you. First of all snow. Focus up towards the Great Lakes, right above the Great Lakes in about Quebec. You're going to see there's high pressure there. And we need high pressure because high pressure over Quebec is going to filter in cold air. And obviously you need cold air to get a snowstorm. Now take a look at the low. The low's in the Gulf of Mexico. That low is gathering up all kinds of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. Now, with the high where it is, we're going to see how the storm's going to track. And that's going to determine whether it's all snow or not. So let me run it. And here it goes. Look at the low. It runs over what we call benchmark. And that means that it stays just off the coast enough that the warm air from the Atlantic can't penetrate and get into the coastal plain and warm us up. So the I-95 corridor stays all snow. That high pressure is pumping in the cold air. That low pressure is coming up. It's not going right on the coast. It's slightly off the coast. And that's what gives us an all-snow event. Okay? So that's an all-snow event. Now look at that. Look where the high is. Again, right over Quebec. The low came up from the Gulf, came out, and slightly off the coast, we stay all snow. Now here's what a mix would look like. Look at the difference. Look where the high is. That high is almost in New England. Okay, so it's further east. Now the track of the storm, let's see what happens there. So I'm going to run the track and look at this. That storm does ride the coast, but this time it rode the coast and hugged the coast. It did not stay out over the Atlantic. It kind of rubs up against the coastline. And what that means is we're no longer in the very cold part of the storm, the northwest sector. We kind of have some warm air that's being pulled in from the Atlantic. Now, it's not enough cold air to turn us over to plain rain, although in a lot of mixed storms, we do go to plain rain for a while, and then we switch back to some snow at the end. We really do not do well with wraparound snow in Philadelphia. They do much better in New England with that, but sometimes it could drop a few inches. But in any event, it's not that much different. The high's slightly over to the east. It's no longer quite over Quebec, more like it's over the New England states. And the low, it ran close to where it was before, but not quite. It's slightly closer to the coast, touching the coastline. I-95 goes over to a mix and rain, maybe back to snow. Northwest suburbs, you might mix a little bit, but you'll have mostly snow. And that's a scenario that we see a lot in most of our winters. Now here's all rain. Got a similar setup. If you look at it, look where the high is. It's still there, but it's now out over the ocean, maybe touching or right on parts of Maine. Okay, so we still have a high, but it's a retreating high. That high's moving over out west and up north. So now as this storm comes up and it starts to track, look where it's going to track. Inland. That low ran right over really Philadelphia. Okay. So now what's happening is we're getting all the warm air. We're getting a surge of warm air, a southeasterly flow, and that means that we're going to warm up. So the difference is stark. We're going to get all rain. There's not going to be any snow. Maybe you'll see a couple of wet flakes to start, maybe a little bit of sleet mixed in at the very beginning, but then a very quick transition to rain. And sometimes the temperatures could go up to, 50, 60 degrees with that southeasterly flow. That's how close it is. So I want to show it to you again. Let me go. Here's the slide with all snow, right? So we got all snow. Look where the high is. High over Quebec, low in the Gulf of Mexico. The high's pumping in the cold air. The low comes up the coast. You got 25 degrees and heavy snow and no mix. No mix. Maybe in South Jersey, along Cape May, you'll see a mix. But that's about it. The I-95 corridor, all snow. 23 degrees, 25 degrees, 28 degrees, whatever, and all snow, okay? Here's the setup for the mix. That high is not that much further east, but it is east. It's closer to New England than it is to Quebec now. And that low, as it comes up, it's still there in the Gulf. It's still making the same track, but now it's closer to the coast. That's maybe 100 miles or maybe 120 miles closer to the coast. That's a pinprick. People think that's a lot. That's not. It's a very small pinprick of distance. So that 100 miles or 125 miles took you from maybe 6 to 12 inches of snow. Now you're looking at 2 to 4 inches of snow and slop, mostly slop. All right, so you'll be shoveling heavy, wet snow. That little difference changes you from possibly a foot of snow to maybe 2 inches. That little difference. And then here's a slight difference. Look where the high is. The high is over Maine, right? Now this storm comes up. It takes a track inland. There's nothing stopping it from cutting inland. It cuts inland. And now you're talking about 60 degrees and heavy rain. So scenario one was, if you remember, temperatures in the 20s, maybe low 30s, all snow, 6 to 12 inches of snow. Scenario two, temperature 32 to 35, 36. You're getting snow to mix, maybe back to snow, a sloppy 2 inches, 4 inches, right? That's a big difference between 6 to 12, 2 to 4 of heavy wet snow. And then this one, slight difference in track, slight difference in where the high is. And now you're talking about rain in 60 degrees. It's almost a spring storm. That's the difference, okay? So it's really not that different. That's why this is hard to predict. And in all honesty, early, when I started following weather, I really did not know these differences. I was like everybody else. I would say, how in the world could they be predicting 6 to 12 inches of snow on Tuesday, and on Friday when the storm comes, everything changes and it's 60 degrees and rain? How could it be? Well, that's how it can be. The models sometimes have trouble figuring out where the players are going to be on the field. It doesn't take a lot of difference. Same thing with the snowstorm that might, maybe on the models, it looks like it's going to be, 45 degrees and a mix. And 2 days later, it's 31 degrees and heavy snow. You say, well, how in the world could it be that far off? One day it was 45 degrees. 2 days later, it's 31. How could the temperatures be that off? Because of the track. The track changes everything. The track decides how much warm air is going to come in, where the flow is coming from. So that's really important. And I just wanted to point that out to you because if you aren't interested in the science behind it, there's nothing wrong with that. But you are going to think that weather people are crazy, that it's just a guess. There's no way that, how in the world could they be that far off? Well, it doesn't take much. It takes a track of 100 miles or even 150 miles either way, west or east, to change the outcome that dramatically. Right? So I just wanted to point that out to you. And it's not a cop-out. I'm not saying that because I've missed forecasts. Everybody misses forecasts. I'm no different. I'm not even a pro. I'm an amateur. But, this is why we had the problems we have, especially in the coastal plain along I-95. Couple of things. Miller A. Now, what you see here, we call this a banana high. In a lot of our big storms, we have this banana high. And a banana high is where you have high pressure over here over Quebec and then high pressure out here to the west. Now, if I can, let me see if I can pull up my my pen here. There's the pen. Why they call it a banana high? Because if you look at it, it looks like a banana. That's why they call it a banana high. So we can get Miller A type storms without a banana high, but a lot of times the really big ones, they have it. Especially the one in 1996 where we got our record 30 inches of snow. And also the one in 2016 where we saw over, I can't remember what the total was, but it was close to 2 feet. So let me just erase the banana there. All right, cool. Now, here's the track, just like we saw when in the all-snow event. This is an all-snow event here. We're going to have it track. Let me get my pointer back. Bear with me. Pointer options. Turn off the pen. All right. So watch. Here's the track. It's coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. Loads up on moisture. Comes just in right on benchmark, actually. Okay. Now, in the Miller B, you got a low in the Gulf of Mexico sitting there, all right? That's come in maybe from the west. Now it's over the Gulf of Mexico, and it's going to start to come up the coast. Now watch what's happening at the same time. There is low pressure coming down from Canada, sweeping through and heading towards the coast. Now, will they merge? Looks like in this case they will, and it takes a track up the coast. We call that a Miller B. Now, Miller Bs are much harder to forecast because you're trying to time when these two low pressure areas are going to phase. Where are they going to phase, right? Are they going to phase? You know, maybe this one will be a kicker. The low that was coming down from the from Canada, maybe it'll just it won't time right and it'll kick this low out to sea and everything goes out to sea and we get nothing. Right? So maybe they won't phase. And if they do phase, let me get that pointer again, the pen. Where are they going to phase? Are they going to phase here? You know, near Tennessee? Are they going to phase here? Near the Delmarva or near New Jersey? Right? The later they phase down here in this area right here, then you're looking at heavy snow for Philadelphia, possibly similar to a Miller A. They phase over here, up further north. Well, now you're looking at light snow in Philadelphia because they merged too late. And now New England's getting buried. They do really well with these Miller Bs. If you like snow in New England, you love Miller Bs. Miller Bs are hit and miss, usually miss in Philadelphia if you're looking for a big storm. A lot of the Miller Bs will give us some, but not the big ones if you're looking for the massive snowstorms. And then I won't go into this, but there are storms that are a mix of both. They're a hybrid. They're a little bit of a Miller A and a Miller B. There's kind of characteristics of both. And, you know, again, they can either deliver tremendous amounts of snow from D.C. up to New England, or they could deliver light snow in Philly and New York and bury New England. So New England usually in a typical winter, of course, does well regardless of whether they're Miller A's or Miller B's. It's the Mid-Atlantic that really struggles with Miller B's. So, you know, is this the everything you need to know about winter storms? No, of course not. There are things about winter storms that I couldn't even begin to talk about because I'm not a trained meteorologist. I have knowledge of this because I read a lot. I have a lot of books on meteorology. I took a couple of classes, but I'm by no means an expert. I just enjoy trying to track the weather and trying to forecast based on the knowledge that I have. And I told you before, based on what I hear from other respected meteorologists. You know, I know their biases. Some meteorologists like Joe Bastardi will call for a blizzard every week. You know, even if it looks obvious that there's not going to be any snow, he's always trying to sniff out a big snowstorm, and he's got a cold and snow bias. Whereas on WPVI, Adam Joseph, he looks for every way in the world for us not to get snow. He's got a warm and less snow bias. So I know there are many meteorologists and amateurs who have different biases. I know the biases of some of the models. So it really has nothing to do with, being a great forecaster. It has more to do with understanding how this stuff works. And if you're interested, I'd be happy to talk to you about it if anybody wants to learn more about it. But this is more of a simplistic version of what can happen. This is how it sets up. There are so many factors that go into it. We talked earlier in the year when I did my forecast, my winter weather forecast, the different types of teleconnections. You have the NAO, the AO, the PNA, the MJO. All these things tie into this. So it's not just, hey, let's see how the storm's going to track. There's so many things that go into it. So I hope you enjoyed the video and the explanation. If you have any questions, don't hesitate. And please, if you can, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I really appreciate it. I want to build that up if I can. So thanks for your time. And if you're